My name is Mark Rubin, and I'm a dream weaver. I hope these widgets help you weave your dreams into reality. My mind is full of models, and when I was 10, I decided I'd do something good with them when I was ready. And in particular, I wanted to do something good with my model of energy transfer, which is a visualization of thermodynamics. And it also is a visualization of business systems. And I thought about it for a few years. And when I was 15, I decided that the good thing that I would do with my models was to launch an eco project, a global eco project based on this model of energy transfer. And in 1985, I decided I'd call this project the Lorax Project, which I'll come back to in a minute, based on from the Dr. Seuss book, The Lorax, where people spoke for the trees. Really, it was a metaphor for taking care of our habitat, the environment, like around us, living things. By the time I was 15, I had learned about Carl Sagan and cosmos and space and time and the pale blue dot that we're on going 19 miles per second around a star. And I thought that was cool that we're just passing through on this rock together at times and at times alone. I also went to a wilderness school run by someone named Tom Brown Jr. It's called the Tracker School. And I learned basic survival skills, just the basics of could you make it, a week or two in the woods by yourself with nothing and survive? It was about understanding where you were, what were the opportunities and risks around you, how could you improve your level of comfort, what are your basic physiological needs at that moment in time. And this is connecting a person to their surroundings. I had already observed at that point when I was 14, 15, most people are completely disconnected from their habitat and through things like, heating and cooling, air conditioning, driving, and entertainment, where people occupy their minds with things they find interesting and exciting because that feels better to them than just looking around or listening to the wind or wondering how many birds are around me, what kinds of birds are around me, which way is the sun moving, which way are the shadows moving, how fast are they moving, what time is sunset, what time is sunrise. I learned that there. And also there, I learned about Buckminster Fuller, who was a super genius and an inventor of many things. He had a game called World Game that I read about in one of his books. And this game was about resource allocation. And this really appealed to me. Buckminster Fuller knew, for example, the energy balances of things based on available information. So basically, how many cows are there? How many chickens are there? How many tons of wheat? How many tons of corn? How much coal back then? How much oil? How much natural gas, nuclear power, whatever the resources were powering humanity, food, energy, water, and technologies available that were either coming or already in place. And the idea of this game was to allocate resources in a way that had the greatest advantage for the largest number of living things for the longest period of time. I believe this is like a long running game, like either months or years. But the idea is that could you understand the system well enough to create an energy balance that was net energy positive in some way? And then you wouldn't have to run out of energy or fight over energy. And this would reduce war. And one of the things I remember about this world game, or maybe it was Buckminster Fuller speaking at something where he talked about the idea that peace is less expensive than war. And that if we invested, I believe it was 90% of the money we spend on war, weapons of war, if we allocated that money for weapons of peace, that we could do that for, I think it was like 5 years or less. And that would create a fairer balance of energy, water, food, resources, using the ideas in World Game so that there'd be less need to fight. So basically investing in two choices. We can invest in war, which is like weapons of war or training for war or, different aspects of preparing for war, like advanced weaponry, faster weapons, bigger weapons, more potent weapons, all kinds of stuff. Or we could invest in peace, which is like clean energy, clean water, clean food, clean soil, healthcare, education. These are weapons of peace. And when people are happy, content, have agency, have sovereignty, then they're less likely to fight. And that is good for everybody because it costs less to get along than to fight. And when I say cost, I don't just mean money. I mean like the whole scenario. And what I learned in this game in 1985, that there was enough resources on the planet to feed everybody, but yet people were starving. And I didn't like this. It's that this didn't sit well with me, that we had the capability to plan and improve, maybe not solve because humans are messy, but improve the chances of long-term thriving rather than, from what I could see, increasing the chances of complete destruction. So I decided in 1985 to combine the philosophies of Carl Sagan, Tom Brown Jr. and his grandfather, Stalking Wolf, and Buckminster Fuller into this global ego project that I was calling at the time the Lorax Project. And I've since changed that name because the nice people at DLA Piper, Dr. Seuss legal team, have informed me that the Lorax Project is trademarked. And also, and they were so cool and nice. And I had bought a domain, I had built a website, done all this stuff. And anyway, I thought of a new name, Project Honeylight, which I like a lot better anyway. So life is lucky. And that's good. And what happened in 2020? Two things happened in early 2020. One, I knew a pandemic was coming in late December, mid-December, I think, of 2019. And I was reading news coming out of China and other places, and pandemics have come before and they will come again. And two, early February 2020 is my wife had a stroke. It was serious. And she was in the hospital almost 5 weeks. And she's fully recovered now and things are good, but it was dicey for a while. While she was in the hospital, things were shutting down. It was a scary time. And it was just me and my two daughters and my dogs. And we were just, I think like a lot of people, just trying to process what was happening and make plans to keep on trucking the best we could. In that time in 2020, I had about 15 or 16 businesses at that point. I was just building businesses. And I guess I, like in retrospect, kind of got lost in it. It was never about maximizing my honey flow or trying to prove anything. I was just doing business stuff because it was fun for me because I can visualize businesses and scale models. And they're like toys to me, like a machine that you would play with. Because I played with machines as a kid, and now I just play with them in this way. Because a business is a system. And if you can visualize all the parts and pieces and how everything works, and you can tune it up and like change the gear ratios and swap out components and try different things and see what works better. I thought that was fun for a long time. The machinery around me in scale models. And in 2020, I remember I had I represent businesses spatially in 3 different ways. And one of the ways is with gears. And the gears represent the value of the money. There's 3 kinds of money: potential money, kinetic money, and theoretical money. All of this is represented by these spinning gears, like a machine that is processing money. And I had over 300 gears in my mind at all times because I had created reports and computer software to feed me this data daily so I could create the models. And what I realized in 2020, and this is why I was like a strange epiphany, there was no benefit of me visualizing these businesses in the detail that I was every day because I wasn't doing any work. I had a whole gigantic team of people doing stuff, and they would feed me these reports and I would look at them and be like, great. I had very little new ideas for these businesses because they've been running for almost 20 years. So they're operating well. I was disengaged from the people doing the work in part because I guess I was bored of the gears spinning around in my mind. It wasn't fun anymore. I wasn't learning anything. I wasn't learning anything is really what it was, because it was the same business times 16 times. Different people, different markets, slightly different setups, but more or less the same machine. Like I said, there was a pandemic. I was isolated, and I was thinking, like, look, what am I doing with my life? Like, I planned to do this project when I was around 55, and at this point, I was 50. And I was like, what am I waiting for? What am I waiting for? I guess really what it was I had a milestone in my mind from when I was 15 that I would do it when I was 55, which was 40 years. And I wasn't 55 yet. So I was just building so that I would have enough honey to do it when I was 55. And I decided in 2020, I was going to start this project and get it going. And that led to, I started thinking about like the mechanics of the project, because I planned to base this project on my model of energy transfer. And I thought, how can I connect this project to kids and inspire curiosity? Because I learned in school, curiosity is crushed by memorization. And being forced to memorize things in school, or being forced to learn things that I'm not interested in or other people aren't interested in. The myth of like, well, you should learn everything so you can like pick what you like. I knew what I liked when I was like 3. So like, I don't need to memorize the Magna Carta. I wasn't learning anything at this point, and I thought it's time to start Project Honeylight. So back to the kids. So what I wanted to do was start the project with these stories about widgets for dream weaving, because there's 2 things I think they get crushed, or at least this is my experience. They get crushed by at least the educational system that I was brought up in, which is the East Coast of the US. Curiosity is crushed by memorization. And the printing press destroyed most people's ability to dream. I say that because we dream in pictures, or at least everyone I know who dreams describes to me the pictures of their dreams, like a movie in their mind. But how many people express themselves with pictures? Almost everyone I know only uses words to communicate, but nobody dreams in words. Who's dreaming in words? Who's reading a book in their dream of words? And I think what happened is when the printing press was invented, and to deploy religion and to deploy laws and to deploy ideas, there were no pictures in the movable type. Before that, I think people were better at dreaming because they drew. And also in growing up, this idea of like doodling is somehow like not paying attention. Doodling is learning. Doodling is organizing. Doodling is synthesizing. Doodling is thinking. When did it become bad or wrong to sketch? Like, I only remember like maybe once or twice in my life where a teacher was like, what are you doing doodling? Pay attention. What? And now we got these kids staring at phones, consuming content, occupying their minds, creating distractions so they can feel entertained all the time, so someone can monetize their attention and sell them something, or sell their data or something. Like, what are we doing to kids? These stories are about dream weaving. This is Project Honeylight Architecture now. And I also have a podcast called Lessons from Nature Podcast, where I describe the secrets of the bees through 6 scientific domains, which is physics, biology, psychology, economics, anthropology, and futurology. After that, I have a kid's book, Honey is Money, The Secrets of the Bees, that I wrote with my friend Dan Rome. He's the artist on this book, super genius, great guy. And after the book is launched, I have a board game called Bee Box, The Business of the Bees, which teaches kids how to be a beekeeper in terms of business, like marketing, sales, operations, HR, finance, admin, special projects. And I'm going to teach kids to convert honey into money. And some of that money will be used to create pollinator habitat. I mentioned in an earlier video, I'm carbon negative for life now by playing these games. I undid my lifetime carbon footprint. So the point of it is there's something you can do to help all of nature's baby bees. You can spend some of your honey converting money into trees. And that's that part of the project. And then also, after teaching the kids the board game, I did a deal with a beekeeping company, and we're going to play the game in real life and sell a bee business in a box kit to kids, which includes everything you need to cover those business functions I just mentioned, and teach the kids how to be beekeepers, but like with real money and real honey and real bees, and deploy this globally. Where this place, where it's all going down, is at Honeylight Glamping, which is a glamping place I'm building right now in the woods of West Virginia. And I mentioned when I was 15, I planned to do this project, and I knew no one would ever believe anything I just said based on my experience. And the movie Back to the Future had just come out. And I started thinking about time travel and like time capsules and like what could I do then in 1985 that would prove later that I planned this ahead? And what makes it believable is I got my name on a deed in 1985 with money I used mowing lawns to buy a piece of land in West Virginia, middle of the woods, middle of nowhere, a couple acres, so I could build a cabin on it and hang out in the woods and launch my global eco project, and also show people the deed to be like, I planned this, and I'm building there now, so I can demonstrate that it's possible to build a world where people live in harmony with the rest of nature. And when people come down here like glamping and they get the eggs from a chicken coop and they play with my little Nigerian dwarf goats that will be dressed as bees and go on a hike in the woods and eat locally grown food and cook their own food over various grills, smokers, fire things, pizza ovens, that is demonstrating a way to live in harmony with the rest of nature, because they'll be intense doing it. And that's also where the Bee-Box board game world championship will be. Actually, the championship of the universe will be there. And that's cool too. So this is an overview of Project Honeylight, how I got to here. I'll link below a couple of diagrams that show the project architecture, where I'm at. By the time you see this, I'm sure they'll be outdated, but you'll get the gist.